everyone. A very good afternoon to all of you. It's a beautiful day today, and we are here recording our very first podcast of the series Word Alive. And right now, with me, that is your host for the day, that is Mijing Brahma. I also have a special guest for today, Mr. Vebuzo Keyho. We welcome you, Mr. Vebuzo, to our podcast. Could you introduce yourself a little bit more before we start with our podcast series?
Thank you, Mijing. This is a big privilege for me to be part of this program. And as being associated with the youth as the youth pastor of Shillong Baptist Church, and also as a former youth director in my village, and also a teacher in Yavatmal Theological College. And today, as working with the youth, it's a privilege that I could get to talk some of the things about the youth.
Okay, thank you so much, Pastor. You do have quite a CV, so to say. So today we are since we are talking to Mr. Vebuzo, who is dealing with the youths in Shillong Baptist Church. So you definitely have an idea that we are going to talk about youth. So the topic for today's podcast is Youth Today. So we have a series of questions, and I would like to ask Pastor Vebuzo about his opinions, and we would have a discussion. So first question that I want to ask Pastor is, what or how do you define youth of today?
Okay, from my perspective and from the observation that I have working with the youth, I would say that today's youth composed mostly of the Generation Z, who are very practical. They are very much into entrepreneurial spirit.
Okay.
And they are very much engaging with the world around them.
Okay. I think I definitely agree with that. Today's youth are quite tech savvy, so they are very practical, and they have a lot of creative ways to venture into entrepreneurial ventures, and of course, engaging, like you said. They are quite in touch with social media and all that. Now, having talked about today's youth, my next question would be, given the fact that both you and me, we are yesteryears youth. So to say, we are the millennials, and today's youth are the Gen Zs. So how do you think yesteryears youth, like us, is different from Gen Zs, that is the youth of today? Like, how different?
Gen Zs are born in a time when there is the peak of technological innovation.
Yes, definitely.
The millennials, were called as the technological pioneers who get to see the coming of technology. So the difference with them is that they get to be fully immersed in the innovation of technology. And with that, we get to see that they are very much practical in the thinking, and they want to be engaged to learn.
Yes.
So for them, they spend very less meaningful time building relationships. Most of the time, the drawback with them is that they spend hours online with the social media and the Netflix, and that also keeps them isolated from each other.
Yes.
And for which they are also sometimes called as the loneliest generation. But in spite of this, the way they think is so much entrepreneurial, and they want to engage not just themselves, but they want to bring an impact to the world around them as well.
Okay, I do agree. I think just to add to that, if Pastor would agree with me, is that I can say that for us millennials, we have seen the best of both worlds. We saw the world before technology entered, and we also saw how technology has affected. And somehow we have adapted to both, right? Whereas for Gen Z, from what I observe, and I think you would also agree with me, you see that they did not see that part of the world when technology was not really an inherent part of our daily lives. So I think for Gen Z, they cannot do without technology at all. And I do agree with you definitely that they are lacking behind in terms of building relationships, societal skills, and communicating with other people or outside their own little world that they have built because of technology. So my next question then, Pastor, for you would be, how do you think this generation gap that we have, like for us millennials and Gen Z, we do have generation gap. Just like for us as millennials, we did have a generation gap compared to the Gen X. That means the senior citizens now, more or less. So how do you think that gap in terms of generation could be actually bridged?
When we talk about bridging the gap, it has and it must always start with knowing and getting to engage with each other.
Yes.
So to know the Gen Z, we should know what are the potentials, what are the issues that they are going through, and also to engage them practically, to get them involved. That's how we could build the bridge between the two generations, because unless we get to come together to hear from each other, to understand each other, it takes an effort to build that bridge.
Yes.
So I think it's very important that we have a dialogue in a sense, getting our potentials, our resources together to understand and to build relationship.
Okay, Pastor. So from what I understand is tapping on the potential, then trying to understand the issues and finding ways to engage them. So are you trying to say that as millennials, it becomes a responsibility on our part to actually try to reach out more to Gen Z, the youths of today, so that the bridge is actually covered or the gap is filled? So that's what I understood. I hope that's what you try to imply it as well. Now, having said that, this brings me to the last question for today's podcast topic. And that is, how important do you think is the role of youth, okay, say youth of today, at present and in future?
To list out or to name out the specific roles may not be possible, but as it has been going on in every generation of the youths, youth plays a very important role. And when it comes to the matter of faith as a Christian youth, we have to engage at this present moment the entrepreneurial spirit of this Gen Z. That means the way they are very practical, innovative, they are creative, and also they want to discover new things and to do away with all ways of doing things. So if we engage them with the gospel and continue to engage in the service in a way that they will get to see and to learn and also have an impact to the world around them. So this is the beginning, and also it will be the discipleship journey for the youth. And this will really play a huge role to change and bring transformation in the world around us.
I do agree with you, Pastor. I think looking at today's youth, that is a Gen Z, they have so much of potential that you can actually use or utilize their potential to the maximum in various fields and to transform the society. The world is changing definitely. And in order to adapt to that change and to make sure that change is for the betterment of the entire world and society in general, I think Gen Z has quite a huge role to play. So having said all this, we have actually come to the end of today's podcast that was on the topic youth today and as part of the Word Alive series. And we thank you so much, Mr. Vebuzo Keyho, for joining us in this podcast series. And to our viewers and listeners, we will soon be coming up with another very interesting topic to discuss on together. So until then, stay tuned to our podcast series, and we'll be providing the links for you, provided if you have some questions or queries or some feedbacks you have to give, or maybe even suggest some topics that you find it intriguing for us to talk about and discourse on. We would surely welcome that. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and thank you, Mr. Vebuzo Keyho.